Welcome to the Tuning In podcast, where we talk alignment, intuition, and our internal guidance system. We cover woo-woo topics in an approachable and practical way. I'm your host, Dana Evans of Alignful.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. I am your host, Dana Evans of Alignful.com. How are you all doing? Oh man, it's been a crazy week. I guess it's only been a week since we talked, but I am finishing up my Inner Voice Facilitator Training with Jess Lively, and that's what we're talking about on the episode this week. I'm talking a little bit more about inner voice work, what it means, what I've been learning in this training, and how it's a little bit different than my membership and how it complements the membership and how you can really start to access that. So it's a great episode. It goes deeper into this work, and I think it's really helpful for you to understand what I am doing and what I offer and why and how it can benefit you and what you can do with that. So that's what we're talking about. Let's see, a couple updates. I have a major highlight of my week. I have my own tube of toothpaste now. Do you guys deal with this? John and I have very different toothpaste practices, and we both use the same brand now. It's called Coral, Coral, and it's like this nano silver sea urchin probiotic. I don't know. It's some super fancy toothpaste, and wow, I was getting really upset during our last toothpaste session because John would leave the top off. And right on the counter, even though the drawer is right underneath it, he'd leave the top off, he'd leave it on the counter every time. Well, with this toothpaste in particular, if it dries out, it gets hard, and then you can't squeeze it out of the stupid tube. So this last round, I was every day cleaning out the tube because he left the top off, and then putting the top back on and putting it in the drawer. And then I'd come back and it was open and the tube was off and it was dried. I was going crazy. But I was picking my battles and I didn't make it a thing. Well, we finally ran out of that toothpaste. I pulled a new one out of the pantry and I claimed it as my own, and I said, you can have your own toothpaste. And so he opened his own, and it's sitting there right now in our bathroom with the top off, and it's hard. But mine has the top on and it's in the drawer, and I'm so happy. It's the small things, guys, okay? We are in week, 7 of quarantine, and we're spending a lot of time together, and sometimes those little things start to drive you crazy. But I'm really trying to practice, I don't know if even picking my battles is the right word. I'm just trying to be a little softer. And I had this inner voice session the other day, and my inner voice really got a kick out of my need to control. And it was like, stop controlling others. And specifically, it told me when I start to feel frustrated or when I start to make others, which in this case is solely my husband because he's the only one I'm around, when I'm trying to force others to conform to my standards, my viewpoint, my inner voice wants me to just go outside and go on a walk, because it knows that nature and the outdoors is really healing and restorative for me, and it will remind me, apparently, that I don't need to control others. So I don't need to control John's toothpaste habits. And I can, though, make a situation where I'm not annoyed by them by having my own toothpaste. And so this is this not relationship 101? It's really important. And then it happened again this morning. Guys, Dana bears all of her imperfections on this episode. I made coffee this morning, and I had only had a half cup, and John was refilling for like the 5th time. And I said, can you at least save me a half cup before you drink all of the coffee? I said, your coffee consumption has become infinite, exponential, and I feel like there's no stopping, and I need coffee. And he looked at me. He's like, so we can't make more coffee? I'm like, it's not about that. You're drinking too much coffee. Okay, Dana, he can make more coffee if he needs more coffee. He's finishing up a home stretch of this work project and wow, right? Control, control, control. So again, I stepped away. I apologize. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to control your coffee consumption. Because here's what I do, guys. When I do those type of things, like try to control something with him, I then flip it around. I'm like, if he told me how much coffee I could have, oh my God, I would totally lose it. Like, I would go all independent woman on him and be like, you don't control me. Why do you get to say? I mean, it's so true. So again, I stepped away. I apologized, made more coffee. It's all good. It is all good, my friends. But you may be feeling similar things. And I have to say, what has been such a saving grace for me lately is that I'm in my 3rd week of training for this Inner Voice Facilitator Training. And every night, it's from 6 to 8 p.m. every single night, Monday through Thursday. And I get to listen to Jess Lively talk about the inner voice and our inner wisdom. And I get to listen to people having sessions, and we get to share about what we've experienced. And then during the day, I'm doing practice sessions with people. Some of you may have signed up with me. And then I've had sessions held for me. And it's just amazing what can happen when you start to surround yourself with this other perspective, this other way of looking at things over and over and over again. See, like with so many other things, we become what we repetitively think, feel, and do. Those options come from us through what we expose ourselves to. So the past 3 weeks, I'm not exposing myself to the news. I am not exposing myself to like a bunch of articles about COVID or anything like that. I'm being exposed to this deep intelligence and inner wisdom in people all around, and including myself. I'm reading this book, Michael Singer. It's called The Surrender Experiment. And it's really about how he followed the guidance of, as he says, the universe through 30, 40 years of his life, and how it turned out to be this, he just wanted to live in the woods by himself. And he turned out to be this like CEO of a, I don't know, $300 million company. And I'm basically exposing myself to this type of information constantly for the past 3 weeks. Does it mean I don't, snap at John? No. But it definitely means that I'm witnessing things from a different perspective. I'm not sitting so much in the fear and the worry and the doubt, but I'm starting to lean into the trust and the bigger picture and the guidance and wisdom within me and within each of us, and how that can play into our lives. And it's really magical. I've sensed a huge shift in my own being since starting this training and diving deep into inner voice work. Now, I think I've described this on the episode before, but I will describe it again. Here is how I see the inner voice. You guys know this is what I talk a lot about, but let me simplify it so much. Is I picture like a triangle, and the two bottoms of the triangle, we have the inner voice and we have the ego. So they're both two sides to the same coin, which is you. And then at the point, the tip of the triangle, we have you as the observer. What you might be told has been the thinker of your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You are the thinker of your thoughts, right? I am not Dana Evans. Dana Evans is the character of my essence, of who I am. So I can then step away from myself and become the observer of myself. A lot of meditation talks about this. Like, you can break away from the thinking of who you think you are and start to witness who you are being. And that's a really great way to shift who you are being, because you become the observer of yourself. Right? We can't change what we don't know is happening, what we're not aware of. So becoming the observer gives you a choice. And so with this triangle, you're the observer, then you have the mind or the ego, whichever you want to call it, and then you have the inner voice. So as the observer, we've been taught as a one direction for the most part of observer sees and hears the mind and is the mind and acts from the mind and thinks every thought is truth. And I like to say, I heard this from James Wedmore, is don't believe everything you think. You are not your thoughts. You can choose your thoughts, but if you're not conscious about choosing your thoughts will just happen. And the mind, the monkey mind, as it's often called, or the lizard brain, right, it will just like, an inner voice told me this analogy recently. It's like ping pong balls, and they're just going to bounce and bang all around in the head if you don't step in and say, hold the phone. We need to talk about this. So that's kind of our typical trajectory. It's mind, thoughts. We live what we experience, and that is what it is. And we don't question that. Then you start to become the observer, and you can say, oh, I am not my thoughts. I think my thoughts. Therefore, if I think my thoughts, I can choose to think different thoughts. And if I can choose my thoughts, it means that any thought I choose can be equally true to me and my experience. I can think I'm beautiful, or I can think I'm ugly. The thought is what matters, because there's no objectivity in that. How I view myself is a thought process. And the more I think of it in one way or the other, this is the story you tell yourself, the more that story becomes true, because our thoughts create feelings, and our feelings trigger actions, and actions create who we are, right? You are what you repetitively do. So if you're thinking I'm ugly, then the actions you take are going to reinforce that thought. And then your feelings will back up those actions, and then you will be ugly, because that's what you believe. I think it's Henry Ford. Whether you say you can or you can't, you're right. It's your choice. You're choosing that thought, and then you're creating a feeling from that, and then you're acting from that feeling, and then you're creating it into reality. This is kind of classic brain science stuff, okay? I don't even really want to go all the way into that, but that's kind of our basic way of being. And then when you first start to become more aware, you realize that. Well, what I'm taking you to through the inner voice work is there's a whole nother side of you that isn't just the thinker. There is the inner voice. And the inner voice is also you, but it is the opposite in a lot of ways of the mind. It is the all-knowing, the essence of you. It is presence, it is peace, it is all love, and it is connected to something greater than you. Ego is self-identified, self-focused, self-obsessed. Inner voice is connected to source, to all-knowing, to collective energy. And it gets to speak to you when you open up to listening to it from that place. It's very challenging for the mind, even my mind, as I've gone deep into this. It's challenging for the mind because the mind thinks the mind is all that is, and it needs to be all that is. It's hard for the mind, even after it hears the inner voice. I've heard so many inner voices now, and it's unbelievable, whether they've known anything about this work or not. There's so many similarities in what the inner voices say. I spoke to someone, I did a session with her, and she knew nothing about this work. Like, she was not, quote, primed to say anything. This was like, she signed up on a whim because her inner voice told her. She was guided to sign up, and then her mind's like, what have we gotten into? But we did the session, and the wisdom that came through, the words that came through, the messages it had to say were very similar to what my inner voice says, and to what Jess's inner voice says, and to what the collective says, and to what Abraham Hicks says. And it just is showing that there is this, my own inner voice described it as a net that's spread over all of us that connects our consciousness together. So we are all individual sovereign beings, as Jess says, but we also are connected to a collective consciousness. So our inner voice both is there to guide us as an individual and to expose us to this all-knowing wisdom that is greater than the mind can ever know, because the mind, that's not the mind's job. Have I lost you yet? I know I'm going out there every week. My husband is like, oh my God, because he's not listening per se to my sessions because I have headphones on, but he hears like the questions I'm asking and how I'm talking. And I'm like, inner voice, the mind does not believe that all is well. What are you talking about? Inner voice, tell me more. What do you mean when you say all is well? What is well? The mind thinks there's tons of problems. So John often hears the my end of the conversation. He's like, I have no idea what's going on. But he just kind of stands back and is like generally supportive. Do you? But it's so fascinating. So if I've lost you, if you're like, Dana, this is too much, that's totally okay. But I would also say, can you listen to this episode from a different part of yourself, from that inner knowing? So a lot of us have an intuition. This, I think, is a term that people are very comfortable with, or at least you're comfortable hearing the word intuition. So often you might say, well, my intuition kind of had me do this. I would then ask you, well, where did you notice that? For some people, it's like, I had a gut feeling, right? I just had a gut feeling that I needed to turn around, or I needed to go into the store at that moment. And then lo and behold, I ran into my best friend from elementary school and we reconnected, and now we live a mile apart and we're best friends again. Whatever. Intuition is very similar to your inner voice. It's just a different way of putting it. But what I want you to find is, where do you notice those signs, those little, what I like to call nudges to do something, and then start to pay attention to that. Because that's where you're going to start to find that voice of your inner voice, by being willing to open yourself up to that other version of you. It's like an alter ego. Honestly, it really is an alter ego. It's an alter non-ego. You're not schizophrenic. You're not crazy. It's just you have more than one version of the story, even within yourself. So what you'll find as you're talking to the ego, just like the intuition has this weird knowing. And I don't know, maybe it's also connected to like the sixth sense. And we are like, okay, that's kind of weird. Often we might write it off as a coincidence. But what I'm offering is, what if you start diving in deeper into that? What does that look like for you? What if you can listen to an episode like this, which seems really weird to your mind, and say, well, what if I listen with this openness and in this receptive mode of my inner being, and what comes through then? Because I know a lot of inner voices, when I'm doing sessions and I talk to them, they're so excited to be able to have the microphone, because the mind is so loud. The mind is like a child throwing a temper tantrum. I described this to one of my clients the other day. She's like, yeah, the mind is like a 2-year-old. She has a 2-year-old. And I said, yeah, it's like a 2-year-old half the time. And the other half the time, it's like a high school girl. Major drama. And it's exhausting. And it's those ping pong balls banging around and asking questions and being afraid and worrying and predicting futures it doesn't want, and only looking at what's bad and not even trusting that what is good is really okay. And how could you even feel good when there's so many other people having problems? And oh, I'm so tired. The mind works so hard. It's like it's on a hamster wheel all the time. It's running. It's trying to prove itself. It's trying to prove that it's worthy, that it's lovable, that it's going to be okay, that it's not better than everyone, and yet it is better than everyone. And it has to predict every future that it absolutely cannot predict. And it sits in fear and worry and doubt. And all it wants to do is keep you safe. That's why we can have a lot of compassion for the mind, because it is like a toddler. It is like a high school girl with drama. It's like they're just trying to keep you safe. They're just trying to control something that's uncontrollable. And by doing that, the only way it knows how is by kind of throwing fits. So it's very loud. The inner voice is not loud. It's not demanding of your attention. It's calm, it's compassionate, it's consistent. It's often like a little whisper or a gentle nudge. So our job as the observer, the tip of that triangle, is to start to create space for the inner voice, to start to create a place that the mind can relax and then ask questions so the inner voice has the opportunity to speak up. And the mind may want to throw a fit. It's like, I don't trust this. It's unknown. The mind doesn't like the unknown. It thinks you're going to die. But creating space is the best way. And so much of this podcast is about finding space. It's one of the things I just believe in so much, is that what each of us tends to lack is space and alone time and quiet contemplation. We spend our lives operating from the mind, which is busy, which is active, which is scheduling, which is planning for the next thing. And if there's nothing to plan, it's going to worry about what it may need to plan next. We are scheduled from sun up to sun down. Our kids are scheduled from sun up to sundown. They don't even have creative space. And it's because we're being driven by the mind's need to be good, to be better, to be efficient and productive and effective. But the inner voice has a way to do all of that. It does not fit into the box of the mind. But it also can't really come through if you're so busy and so scheduled that you have no space. So I often recommend that my clients just take 5 minutes a few times a day to just, as my inner voice has been telling me constantly lately, breathe and receive. Take a few breaths, exhale the thoughts, and then ask, inner voice, are you there? That's all you need to ask. I am here. I am listening. Is there anything I need to know? And you really start opening yourself up to that energy, getting curious about what that means, what it sounds like. It's funny, as I'm telling you this, I'm like pulsing. My body and my inner voice, it speaks through movements in my body a lot. It just feels nice to slow down, to breathe, and to have silence. Even if you have kids, even if you have a full-time job, even if you have a schedule to keep, I know that there are 5 to 10 to 20 minutes, 1 to 2 to 3 times a day that you actually do have. The fact that you don't have it, it just means that you're not making it a priority, because you may have that time to scroll through Instagram. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just we have to figure out what really is important. And you can only start to see this as important if you allow yourself to experience it. And a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about, it might be a little beyond you, but we go deep into all of this in the membership. Like we talk about inner voice versus ego. We talk about your 5 different inner voice types so you know what you can hear. We talk about 3 different ways that you can communicate to the inner voice. So the membership, Align in 5, which by the way, guys, is opening again on June 11th. And I have a free challenge coming up on June 8th. So mark your calendars because we're releasing some really cool content if you're interested, or if your interest is piqued, especially through this episode. But the membership really takes this stuff bit by bit and helps you really become someone who really gets this and sees the value in it. But then what I've been trained to do now with Just Lively is these deep inner voice sessions, which are 90-minute to 2-hour sessions where basically we give your mind a cocktail, we send it to the beach, we send it on vacation, and set it aside, and I speak directly to your inner voice for 90 minutes to 2 hours. And can I just tell you, the people who have done this, myself included, it is like the biggest exhale they've ever had. To be free of the mind for a sustained period of time, it's like a drug. Your entire body gets to relax. Your entire being gets to relax. And your inner voice gets to share all of this wisdom that it has always had and will always have directly to you, to your mind. I basically interview the inner voice as if I was the mind. So the mind's questions get answered, but from the perspective of the inner voice. And so much beauty, so much wisdom comes through, and it's so peaceful for the being, for the person receiving that. When I finished my session the other day, my whole body was buzzing. It was just light and still. And it continued to be so the rest of the day and into the next day. It was like, oh, this is how I can feel. I can still create content for my membership. I can still do work. I can still coach people. I can still make dinner. I can still clean and cook. I can still interact with my husband. But all of it has a different energy when I'm guided by that inner wisdom versus the incessant demands of the mind. So my belief is the more space we make for the inner voice, for this inner wisdom to shine through, the more easeful, enjoyable, and side note, effective we can be in our lives. The mind tries to effort and make things hard. The inner voice knows that it can be easy and effortless if we remove the mind's constraints. For example, my membership content. I just laugh because this one is one that I really let my inner voice guide me on, since that's like the theme of the membership. But would you believe that for the first month of my membership, which it released on January 1st, I went on vacation in New York City for my dear friend's wedding and literally uploaded the last bit of the content for the membership for month 1 on December 31st, right before I left for the wedding reception. I totally didn't shower for the wedding reception because I was finishing up, but it wasn't frantic and it wasn't stressful. It was just that was the time to do it. But who in their right mind would have left for a trip, a wedding trip, no less, in New York where they'd be busy without having done the content for their membership? The mind finds that unacceptable. But my inner being was like, just wait. And guess what? It was fine. And once again, May 1st, when I'm recording right now, May 1st is on Friday. And just yesterday, did I sit down to create all the content for May for the membership. And I have a couple things to finish today, but here's the deal. My mind all month was trying to plan it and make it happen, but it didn't feel aligned. It didn't feel right. My inner voice knew that there was a technical deadline. And yesterday, I was like, oh, this feels right. It's not that I planned to do it. I woke up and I showered and I was like, well, if I showered, maybe I'll put on makeup. I'm like, well, if I put on makeup, maybe I'll blow dry my hair. Well, if I blow dry it, I may as well style it. So next thing I knew, I looked all pretty. I had a full day open and I thought, oh, I guess I can record videos today for May's content. Boom, done. I did it. So the inner voice has a very different way of going about doing things, but it doesn't mean things don't get done. It doesn't mean they don't get done by the deadline. But what it does mean is things get done with less effort, more enjoyment, and my general belief is with more inspiration, because you're creating from that inspired, trusting place versus creating from fear and doubt and hurry. And you can picture the energy in the two, right? Imagine feeling inspired and spacious and trusting that this will be perfect, and then creating from that place, or even doing any work from that place versus creating from hurry, doubt, fear, and rush. And I'm a firm believer that the output of our creation is directly related to the input. So the energy going into our creation has a direct effect on the result of our creation. So I just trust. And I know your minds right now are fighting me and they're giving me, well, what if this? Well, it's easy for you. Well. But here's the deal. Here's what I'm seeing. The more sessions I do, the more I'm seeing the wisdom of the inner voice. And the more that I see people trusting and following this, the easier their lives get. It doesn't matter if they work full-time or if they're a full-time mom or if they have all the time in the world. It doesn't matter, because each of their inner voices will guide them towards what is right for them. What is the theme of my membership? To start doing what is right for you, not what is expected of you. The mind operates based on expectation that it sets typically based on society and what others will think. The inner voice operates on guidance, what is right for you in this moment, in this moment, in this moment. And it guides you toward that, which is guiding you toward more ease, more enjoyment, more love, more creation. Ooh, isn't that beautiful? So I'm just so inspired by this work. Starting May 1st, I am taking on public inner voice sessions. So I am offering a little special. The price for my sessions, there'll be 2-hour sessions, is $333, which I'm very excited about. I love my aligned numbers. But the first 5 people who join me, I'm going to offer them a special for $222. So you can sign up at alignful.com/work, and there will be it's the work with me page, and there's the option to select inner voice coaching, and you can schedule that. So the first 5 people, you guys, just for your support and for your excitement, you'll get the $222 price, and then the standard price is $333. It's a 2-hour session. I hold that space for you. We interview your inner voice, and the beauty is it's a single 2-hour session. It's a whole lot of time to be in that space, and it can shift your being for a very long time. It's hard to go into the inner voice and then bounce completely back to regular life because you have that wisdom. And then you get the recording of that. And that recording is, oh my gosh, it's really interesting to listen back to. And then the other thing that I'm starting up are what we're calling basically emotional processing sessions. So one thing that comes up a lot with the inner voices is stored emotion in the body bubbles up because the inner voice feels that this is a safe place to do so. So you might get intense waves of emotion. So for people who might feel really triggered right now, and you feel like you might need something to help process that emotion, you need support processing that, you need space to process that, not alone, you can sign up for an emotional processing session, which are 45 minutes or so for $88. And here's my little extra special hug for you guys. If you do that session and you love it and it's really helpful for you, you've been able to process some emotion that was really stuck and sticky in you, and now you feel light and easy because you let that go. If you then want to do a full inner voice session, which you may, then I'll apply that $88 to the $333 inner voice session. So you'll, whatever, $333 minus $88 is what you'll pay for the inner voice session. So it's kind of like a down payment, as you will, because I want to get you in there and help you move the emotional energy and feel that immediate relief of 1 or 2 things that you've been holding on tight. But then once you get a taste of that, you often want something deeper and more experience in that energy, in which case you can do the 2-hour session and you can take that $88 off. So I wanted to share all of that with you. I have never felt so much alignment toward what I am doing. And my desire to share this with everyone and have more people experience this is like my heart bursts with excitement. My inner voice bursts with excitement that it gets to share this and open up others to their inner voice. So as always, we have the membership. It opens in June. I think of the membership as like your gym membership. So the gym membership, like it keeps you active. It keeps you going to the gym. It helps you with like your muscle tone and like your daily energy. And then you have like a personal training session, which are these 2-hour one-to-one sessions. And that helps you like go deeper and push things a little bit further and maybe learn a little bit more about yourself and new exercises. But you still want to have the gym membership, even if you use a personal trainer occasionally. So that's the Align in 5 membership versus these one-to-one deep inner voice sessions. I hope that explains a lot for you guys. I know I kind of explained it in a roundabout story, but it's kind of just how I'm guided to share with you. And as always, I'm so grateful for you guys for listening, for showing up every week. And especially this episode, if you feel that this could help anyone or anyone else might be looking for this inner wisdom and to go deeper into themselves, but they're not sure quite how to go there without the mind, please send them this episode. Tag me on Instagram at Dana_Evans. Take a screenshot of the episode, share it, let anyone know who you think would benefit from it. And again, alignful.com/work. That will give you everything you need to get an inner voice session. I cannot wait to work with each and every one of you. And from my inner voice to yours, peace is within when you share who you are. We love you so. We love you so. We love you so. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tuning In podcast. As always, if this would resonate with anyone you know, please share the episode. You can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans or find me on my website at alignful.com.